Hi, this is Andy from MPRV News. Welcome to the origins of MPRV News, Part 8. 1989. As the 80s draw to a close, I had resisted the temptation of putting on shows myself. Daz had suggested the idea to me, and I certainly had the collateral to do it. But in the end, there was no need to. A new player had come on the scene putting on shows, and he was basically putting on the shows that I would have done anyway. His name was Greg. He was in a gothic punk band called Smoky Mirror, but he was not only putting the shows on, he was doing all the soundboard as well. He was about 6'8", a real big guy, but he had a heart to match that stature. So all was good. Greg was regular putting shows on in Birmingham in Digbeth at a venue called the Barrel Organ. In later years it became the Dubliner and then had a big fire, and today it is known as Subside. For a fair few years we had regular bands playing from all over the UK at the Barrel Organ. And then we was also getting bands from America and Japan playing there, such as Soulside, the Vandals, the list went on. Special mention also for Edward's Number 8, which was putting on the bigger bands that the Barrel Organ was too small for. Bands like Gangrene, Slapshot, or Agnostic Front all did their first UK tours at Edward's Number 8. Eventually Gray found another venue even more in the centre of Birmingham. It was called the Foundry. Birmingham have finally found a venue to build the scene around and make it stronger, something that we had lost after the Mermaid had closed. It's amazing looking back, the bands from overseas that the Foundry managed to book. So many of these bands, it was their first UK tours. They had bands like AFI, Civ, Ignite, Labwagon, No Use for the Name, Madball, Sub-Zero, and then there was familiar ones like DOA, Agnostic Front. The list just kept going on and on. Some of the memories that stick with me from the Foundry, one of them was Murphy's Law. When they played there, only about 30-40 people showed up. But then on their next UK tour, Greg booked them again. And I said to Greg, why you booked them since you made a loss? And he says, I'm not bothered. I liked them. I wanted to see them again live. That was the DIY spirit that was going through the veins of the Foundry. And talking of DIY, the spirit at the time was shown no more better than from the Migglers band, Assert, who not only were building up a following in the scene, were also getting on tours with the likes of Madball, Agnostic Front, Cause for Alarm, not only in the UK scene, but around Europe also. Along with the many CDs the band put out, they also put out an international hardcore and punk compilation called Fuck Divisions. Britt, the singer of Assert, liner notes inside the CD typified the feeling and the thinking of the DIY scene at the time. One more Foundry story was when the Misfits did their first full UK tour, and one of the dates was booked in at the Foundry. And they showed up, did the sound check, and then went walking round Birmingham, hitting a few bars. Nothing wrong with that, a lot of bands do that. Only trouble was they lost track of time totally. The Foundry had a curfew where all bands must finish at 11 o'clock, and the Misfits finally got back to the Foundry at 10:55. Yep, that's right, they had 5 minutes left. They actually got halfway through the song Halloween before the power was cut off. and people was pissed off. Misfits were totally embarrassed. So they did the biggest guest list of all time and put the entire audience on a guest list and signed autographs and give them stickers, and basically agreed with Greg that on their next tour they would play the Foundry and play the show for free, and everyone on that guest list will get in for free. And true punk rock gentlemen, they play the show something like 3 months later, and it went down real well. Things were booming at the Foundry. The punk scene had finally thrown the shackles away from the street punk scene and was going off in its own direction, doing its own thing, booking international bands, and the audiences were thriving. What could go wrong? We was about to get a scene that was going to rival anybody's in the country. What could go wrong? The land that the Foundry was built on had got earmarked for student accommodation, and in no time the Foundry was shut and got demolished. With the Foundry gone, the Birmingham punk scene had been left with a massive hole in it. All that was going on was the big American bands playing the big shows, and the street punk scene, which over the years had got smaller and smaller from going to big venues to just being in pubs. I went to see Dropkick Murphys at one of the big shows at the Academy. Big stage, barriers, line of bouncers. I just hate that sort of thing, to be honest. With about 20 minutes ago, I just decided to head on home. And with it, I decided it was time to walk away from punk in Birmingham totally. Looking back, it's amazing how many years went by with my involvement of punk being virtually non-existent. If I went to a show, it was somewhere in Derby to see one of the American old school bands. But other than that, I wasn't having anything to do with punk. In fact, some years I either didn't go to a punk show at all, or I saw more punk shows in America than I did in England, and the years just kept rolling by. 13 years have rolled by, unlucky for some, they say, but 2014 was about to mark my return, and with a new form of media.